Hello, and thank you for joining us for the series that OCD Gamechangers has started called Compassionate Connections. This is an initiative that was started by a group of people that you are going to meet tonight if you haven't already met them, that really puts an emphasis on living with OCD and addiction and substance use, but approaching the subject with compassion and empathy. As we all know, living with addiction, substance use creates such a huge degree of shame and guilt. And it is an area in our community that has not had a lot of awareness around it, which then further increases the shame. So we put our heads together, a bunch of people that are very passionate about this topic, and we thought, how can we show up for the community? What can we do to show up, talk about some of the really important concepts around living with the OCD, with addiction and substance use, and also provide a space where you feel safe, where you feel like you are being met where you are at and you're not feeling shamed. That's the goal of what we're doing. So thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Chrissy Hodges. I'm the executive director of OCD Gamechangers. I'm a certified peer support specialist here in the state of Colorado. And I also am co-owners of OCD Peers, which provides group support, peer support, not therapy. And why is this topic important to me? It's not only important because of how many people I meet with and provide support who are struggling with addiction and substance use and very ashamed to speak up, very ashamed to tell their therapist because they're worried that then they won't receive therapy, but also because I myself struggle with substance use and other areas of addiction that will talk about a little bit later tonight. And so this topic is very, very important to me. Now, about OCD Gamechangers. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We do accept donations. There are many OCD organizations out there that you can explore and support. So many of us rely on your donations. We rely on them for initiatives. We rely on them to be able to do things like this. We rely on them to be able to put on events like our next event coming up on May 29th, the OCD Gamechangers Retreat. Yay! Okay, so this is going to be a full-on support retreat. It's going to be all day, well, all something, depending on where you're at in your time zone. Eastern Standard Time is going to be later in the afternoon, but we are strictly going to meet you where you're at and provide support in different rooms. It's going to be camp and retreat themes. So we'll have cabins and we'll have cottages and we'll have campfire chats. We really are just going to show up where you're at and help support you during this time where everything feels very uncertain and we have lost some connection. So if you would like to buy tickets to that, go to ocdgamechangers.com under the events tab. And if you also want to donate, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. Every penny you donate goes to these initiatives. We're going to be doing a lot of cool stuff in the next few months, so I hope you'll come on board. Also, if you cannot afford a ticket to Gamechangers, please reach out to us at ocdgamechangers@gmail.com. We do have a lot of people giving sponsorships to the event, which we're so excited about. We've got great partners. Now, speaking of connection and lack of connection, tonight, that's what we're talking about. When we talk about addiction and substance use, connection is so important to talk about. The lack of connection sometimes drives addiction and substance use. So let's get started. And thank you for being here. And please feel free, if you have questions or comments, to put them in the comment section. Well, look, sometimes we don't get to them because there's a lot of us and we got a lot to say. But the next time we meet in a couple of weeks, we will address those questions and any that you might have that you want to reach out beforehand if they're going to be anonymous. I'm going to bring on our speakers and guests tonight for our roundtable discussion, one by one, have them introduce who they are, what they do, and why this topic is important to them. First up, Chance McNeely. I bet you didn't think you were going to be first.
No, I was last time. This is some bullshit.
All right, well, you're on board. Here you go.
Yep. So my name is Chance McNeely. I'm an OCD sufferer and a certified peer support specialist in the state of Louisiana. I do work with OCDpeers.com. I'm also a consultant. I work in politics and public policy, and that's my primary job. And so I do that. I'm also here today because I have and sometimes still do suffer and struggle with addiction, particularly around alcohol, but it's been other things too. And the concept of disconnection I can really relate to. Although
Right, we'll get into that later.
Oh, okay. So
you're just doing an introduction.
That's all. See ya.
You will have time to speak. I just knew that we would keep going on, and it will be.
You made me go. You made me go first, so thank you for establishing.
I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Else.
I didn't mean to take you away. Sorry, someone left. No, you stay here. Here we go. Lauren,
Hi.
Hello.
It's good to join you.
Introduce yourself.
I am Lauren Mcmeeken, and wow, I'm going out of frame too. I am with the OCD Center of Los Angeles, and I'm a therapist, and I'm here because in addition to working with OCD, I am in recovery from both OCD and substance use disorder. So it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and glad to chat about it all with you guys.
Thank you for taking the cue from me having to reprimand Chance that we're not talking about connection just yet.
I take boundaries well. Shut down. Okay.
All right. Now we have Dr. Patrick Mcgrath. Woo!
I was born in 1971 to two very fine. Oh, wait, is that not? I'm sorry. My apologies. So, Patrick Mcgrath. I am head of clinical services for NoCD, and in my former life, prior to that at Amita Health, opened up the Foglia Family Foundation Residential Treatment Center, which is still running, and I still consult there. And it was the first residential treatment center for OCD and co-occurring substance use as well.
Woo, woo. Game changer, right? OG. You're the OG, Patrick Mcgrath.
Well, thank you.
All right, here we go. Mr. Sean.
Hey, I'm next.
Yeah.
So thanks, Chrissy. My name's Sean Shinnick. I am an artist, advocate, project developer, all that fun stuff, and escaping an addiction with alcohol during my 20s before I got the right treatment for OC was a very big part of my life. So by me telling my story, hopefully I can help other people, and that's why this is really, really important for me to talk about.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And now, Mr. Neil Hemmer.
Hello, I am Neil Hemmer. I am a social worker, and I'm also a peer for OCDpeers.com, which is pretty cool. I have lived experience with both OCD and substance use disorder. I'm a year and like a month and a half sober, and actually went through the Foglia Family Residential Foundation, and Patrick is having a whole party for my sobriety. So yeah, that's cool. This is important to me because obviously I struggled for so long with both disorders, and tried to cover one up and then tried to cover the other up with the other, and blah, blah. So it was a really long road home, but I'm finally healing. So that's very cool. And I think it's really, really important to destigmatize these things because there's nothing to be ashamed of. So. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Neil. And we have Ms. Margaret Citizen, who has new internet, we think. Well, you're on mute.
Almost.
She may have new internet, but no internet skills.
Old Margaret, new internet, old Margaret is what we have. Yeah.
Okay. New internet, old Margaret. Okay, here I am. Shit. I'm Margaret Citizen. I'm executive director of Riley's Wish Foundation. This topic is, I'm very passionate about it. I lost my son, Riley Citizen, 6 years ago to substance use and OCD. And these are my peeps that help me get through every day. And I'm excited to have this forum again.
Excellent. Yay. And last but not least, Mr. John Tessitore.
Hey, how's everyone doing? We're back. Thanks for having me again, and it's a pleasure to be with this crew. Just a bunch of really good-hearted individuals, which I think is what makes this world go around and what gives people hope. So I just want to thank you for being on here. My name's John Tessitore. I'm the founder of an organization called the JCK Foundation. And, this topic means a lot to me just because, I just think OCD and addiction are two of the most misunderstood things out there. And I feel like there's a lot of great people that are suffering and living with both of these issues. So I just find being able to have an outlet, to be compassionate, to have these conversations, to make other people really feel like they're not alone, but most importantly, feel like they have a space to talk, have a space to share. And hopefully they could take this with you and you can kind of use the energy you get from tonight to inspire you to keep going and spread your energy to someone else. So yeah, this has a deep meaning to me. I have a lot of friends and myself who suffer from OCD and addiction, including a lot of us in here as well. But we got a whole crew here. So thanks for having me. And hopefully, we could just help some people today. That's what it's all about. So thank you.
Yes. And piggybacking off of that, that's what this is so important. What we're doing is people can come back and watch this over and over and over. It will be up on our YouTube channel as well as our Facebook channel. If you don't make it today, it will be here. And that way, anytime you need to access people that just know what you're going through, people who support you, people who love you, people who just know what it's like, we are going to be here for that. And that is why tonight's topic is so important. Tonight's topic is connection. And I think that this has such a big impact on people who suffer with OCD because there's such a lack of connection with ourselves because of the ego dystonic piece. So then, I was saying this earlier, so I'm not going to go first. I'll let y'all go first, but I'm basically sharing on my whole story right here. So then you try to fill that lack of connection up with addiction, substance, things that can help you feel more connected, not only to yourself and to others, but as we do sometimes know when that happens, then all of a sudden you feel even more disconnected. So it feels like this cycle that you just can't get out of. So tonight we want to talk about that. We want to talk about what it feels like. We want to talk about what has felt like for loved ones or for people that treat OCD and addiction, what that, your insight on that. And I'm going to leave it up to you. So I'll go ahead and just call on people to go since I'm in order. And then after everybody gets to talk about that topic in particular, we'll kind of come back together. And this is so groupish. I'm like, anyway, after everybody checks in. And by the way, there's no crosstalk during checking in. After that, we'll talk about what resonates with everyone and then continue the conversation. So Chance McNeely, why don't you go first? I'm only saying that because you're right beside me. I'm not picking on you.
As I was trying to say earlier when you cut me off, disconnection or lack of connection, to me is really what drives OCD for me, and it certainly drives addiction. I mean, like the lack of when I'm having a lot of intrusive thoughts, I don't feel like I belong even with myself, much less with anyone else. And so, that's a really painful place to be. And so, as I've talked about before, like beer is the first thing that made all that go away. And I felt like I did belong, and to myself and to other people. And so that was cool. And so I have relied on that quite a bit for a very long time. So, I mean, even to this day, when I suffer with OCD, it's because I don't feel like I belong. And if I'm doing compulsions, I'm trying to get to a place where I feel like I'm the right version of me. And I never do. And so if the compulsions don't work, then it gets late enough at night, I'll just drink it away. Right. And of course, at the end of the day, that doesn't help. But I may get like an hour or two where I feel better. And so I just, disconnection drives for me OCD and addiction, because for me, the desire and the need to compulse on anything is really about trying to belong somewhere, just to know.
Thank you, Chance. I just want to say hi to Sam and Jasmine. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for that. I can resonate very much with that, Chance. Lauren, why don't you go next? What does this topic mean to you?
First of all, thanks for what you said, Chance. I agree. I don't know, like in terms of my experience with isolation and with substance use, I have to say that both have felt isolating at times, but I think my OCD has actually made me feel more isolated than anything in my life. And two things pop out. One, when the diagnosis that really brought me to treatment and brought me to my knees, like what the content of my OCD diagnosis didn't fit neatly into any subtype. And so I felt like, yeah, but nobody's going to ever get me. And it's certainly not been the case, but I think that sort of chatter around my experience there was really loud. And I think in terms of feeling isolated with intrusive thoughts as well, I think there's this sense that you're lying to everybody about who you really are when you have OCD, and that like if everybody knew, they'd totally reject you or they'd be hurt or horrified. And so I think that that's an incredibly isolating experience. And well, ultimately you can learn to tolerate that feeling and to not engage with this conversation in your mind about how you're a horrible human for not telling the truth or, saying what's on your mind. It's tough. And then of course, Chance, to your point, I think this is what I really resonated with in what you said, that sense of connection that came with alcohol was like, yes, like I'm part of something. I'm not all of that sort of second guessing of am I interesting or cool or intelligent? It just kind of melted away. And so, yeah, I don't know, all like the sort of sense of connection and isolation, big part of my journey with both, I think.
Thank you so much. I was writing notes. The lying part, especially. Whew, that is just so huge with the intrusive thoughts. Thank you. For those of you that are just joining us now, hi, Thomas. Thank you for being here. We are talking about connection, the lack of connection and how that can drive addiction, not only with addiction, but also OCD. So with that said, Patrick Mcgrath, you ready to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always disconnected because no one else has this thing in the corner on their head every time we do this webinar but me. So I always feel a little disconnected from everyone else on the webinar. But otherwise, in terms of in terms of connection, I think from a therapist point of view, sometimes I have what I would consider a privilege to help someone establish a connection after they have felt disconnected from everyone in their life, right? No one else understands them. No one else really gets it. Sometimes they hear just things like, oh, just stop drinking, just stop doing that OCD stuff, stop thinking that. And when someone can come in my office and I could say, oh, I've heard this before, I've treated other people like this, and I don't look at them like there's something wrong with them, but I kind of recognize them. I love watching the transformation from that disconnection, which is to me one of the things that led them to come into treatment, because they had no one to turn to. And maybe the only thing to turn to was alcohol or drugs, because it doesn't talk back to you, and it doesn't get angry at you, and it doesn't tell you you're stupid, and it doesn't tell you to stop thinking it. It actually says to you, I can help you stop thinking it. Just keep using me and we're good. We've got this great synapse, kind of synchronous relationship going on here with each other. But that's not a connection to a person. That's the more you use, the more disconnected, I think, in many ways you do become from other people, because you have found something that works so well, so fast, that you develop a connection with that thing instead of with people. So I get the privilege of sometimes being the first person that you might reestablish a connection with and move away from that disconnection from people. And I want to create a disconnection from substances and a reconnection with people instead.
Thank you. Great insight. Appreciate that. I don't strategically put you there. I have no idea.
I don't know about that, but you know, we'll just agree to disagree.
I think Margaret dropped her internet on purpose just for that. All right. So next up, Sean, weigh in on your thoughts about connection, disconnection.
So yeah, I think feeling connected, especially connected to other humans, is fundamentally what we want, what we need as humans. And as I found out, or as one of my coping mechanisms happened to manifest when I was really, really young, losing my mom to cancer, having problems in school because of OCD, the way that I handled that was to numb out and to disconnect, disconnect from people, disconnect from my values, disconnect from reality a lot. And especially with my OCD, also filling in a lot of those gaps with the thoughts of feeling like a sociopath or someone who isn't able to feel emotions and feel empathy and feel these things and have that connection. So I'm numbing out my emotions because they're so strong and so sensitive, while OCD is also barking at me that like, oh yeah, because you're numb, you must be the sociopath. So there's a lot of pain associated with that early. And I didn't know what the hell to do. I didn't really know what to do. And I needed to escape that feeling that, and when I say escape the pain, I was listening to Chance talk and Lauren, and I started I kind of realized a little bit that really when I say I'm escaping from pain, I really mean that I was escaping from the feeling of disconnection. And when I would go out and binge drink with my friends, something happened where I was able to feel more connected or be more vulnerable in a way that was synthetically manifested rather than me using healthier habits by doing so. And because I had that window of feeling like I was part of the group, or I added something to the group, or the identity that I had fused with so much because of my OCD was gone, and the inner Sean came out for a little while. It was such a powerful feeling that I wanted more and more of it. I wanted more of that. I felt I could finally express emotions to my friends, and I could be vulnerable. However, the more and more I did it, especially as the night went on, it became more and more toxic and unhealthy. And my friends would always be like, dude, man, it's like 3 a.m. We gotta cut this off. And I'm like, you don't understand. I'm feeling something that I don't feel during the week. And when I go to sleep, I wake up and I feel distant again. And these thoughts come back. So the allure of having or self-medicating was so strong for me, so very strong. What I wasn't doing, I wasn't connecting with my values. I wasn't connecting with purpose and stuff like that. That's what brought me out of the situation. But what it did momentarily and temporarily was help me connect with people. And that's what I needed. And I think what a lot of people need, especially when your mind's filled with anxiety, OCD, intrusive thoughts, everything that's going on. So it was very powerful in my 20s, and still has a lure to this day to want to escape that pain, especially when I'm feeling disconnected. So.
Thank you. When OCD starts working with addiction, then they're working together against you. OCD hires addiction. And all of a sudden they're both working against you. Yeah, that sucks. Neil.
What's up? What's up? So yeah, I mean, I guess the thing that always swirls around in my mind about this is the more you feel connected while participating in any unhealthy behavior, right? So I'll speak for myself. For me, it's drinking. The more I drank and the more I was in this delusion that I was connected, I was actually disconnected, right? So the further I got into my addiction, the more relationships I ruined, the more I hurt people, the more I yelled at people, the more I isolated myself because I knew that my behavior was not true to who I am as a person, right? All those things. But all the while, right, Sean, to your point, that I felt like I was becoming more connected. Like I was doing what everyone else was doing. So theoretically, I was like, like this should bring me connection. I'm hanging out with people. I'm around others. We're all getting blackout drunk together, right? This is like the thing that you do. But the more I was doing that, the more disconnected I was. And I think that's the saddest reality of all for me, because then when I woke up from this 10-year dream, all of a sudden I was like, man, I don't even know what my values are anymore. I don't know who my friends are. And the people who I thought were my friends, right, aren't really the closest people to me because I either pushed them away or we were fueling unhealthy things together, right? And that we're not bettering ourselves in any way, and certainly not being guided by our values. And so the relationship was built on shambles. So I think there's a ton of disconnection. I mean, and I think for me, that was like the heart of my addiction, right? Was just feeling so alone all the time. And obviously that's how OCD feels too. I mean, I think everyone said that, but I think they're both different kinds of alone. But at the same time, there's definitely some parallels, because I feel like the more I compulsed, also the more I felt connected, right? The more I felt normal, but also that was the more disconnected I was becoming from reality, from myself, because I was just giving into the OCD all the time and I wasn't being true to my values or myself. So yeah, dang, this is like a heavy topic. I was not thinking of getting this deep, and then all of a sudden you guys started talking. I was like, damn, I'm like really alone. This sucks. I'm getting better, right? Like I'm very young in my healing process, but yeah, I think disconnection was the thing and that's kind of what I saw in my residential treatment too, was people being like, yeah, I have no one to turn to. Right, because I ruined all my relationships by not being who I really was, by using this substance and grasping for connection, by using these things that are like widely known to be unhealthy. So, yeah.
Don't worry, we'll end on hope.
Thank God.
But we want to hit the reality.
We do, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for shizzle.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
John.
This is I love listening to everyone speak because I always take a different piece from what everyone says. And Neil, I think something too, just to give yourself a little bit of credit for is, even though you say that you're isolated and you did ruin a lot of relationships, right? Look at all the relationships that you're starting to build now, and look at how you're reframing them, right? And look at how you had to go through that really tough experience and you had to feel that pain to really realize, okay, I don't want to feel like that again. I want to, I want to be able to give myself that power to rebuild those relationships. And you should give yourself like a big pat on the back because, I know exactly how that feels. And those relationships that, I consider myself lucky because the OCD and addiction really came close to ruining a lot of relationships for me. Really, really came close. And luckily, I feel like I just started taking it serious enough to do it before it happened. I remember just vividly, even this summer, my brother was visiting our family from California, and we're all together. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this, especially with isolation. And what Patrick said was, that addiction is luring. It says, hey, this is how you connect. This is where you can connect. And I remember my whole family is there. we're on like vacation, should be this beautiful time when we're talking about life. And all I'm thinking is, I don't want to talk to my brother and compare myself to everything that they're doing and what's going on. And then my mind starts going, I was like, let me just go upstairs and, get out of here. And that was like, well, I'm connecting now. And then at the end of it, I remember as my brother was leaving, I was like, oh my God, I got to spend time with my brother. There's 20 minutes left before he gets on a flight to California. And it's just kind of really powerful what addiction does and the shame that kind of associates with that. And I don't know, it's kind of a little bit off topic, but a lot of what people were saying here just kind of brought that out. And what Sean was saying also that I think meant a lot too is how, it's 3 a.m. and you're saying, what do you mean we got to stop? Like, we're just getting started here. You have no idea how I'm going to feel in 10 minutes when everything is gone and I'm just stuck here with my thoughts. So, I do think that lack of connection is really, really hard when we're deep within it. And then something that I always try to tell myself is when I am connecting is not to forget what it feels like not to connect, because you got to be kind to people who are going through that. And when you are doing good, you're never above anyone else. You're always at that same level. We're all in this together. When you're doing well, yes, we want to celebrate ourselves doing well, but we want to also, keep in mind that we're not always going to be doing well. And there's people around us that might not be doing well. So let's get at their level and talk to them and show them that it's okay to meet you where you all are at. And I think that's something that hits me because I consider myself doing well right now, but that doesn't mean I'm going to forget and sit there and say, oh, if my buddy's not doing well, he should get well because I got well. That is the biggest lie anyone could tell themselves. So I think that's something that's really important is, whether we're feeling good, whether we're feeling bad, or somewhere in between, where I feel like a lot of us always are with this madness that we fight in our heads sometimes. But just always, continuing to connect wherever we are at, whether we're doing well, not doing well, somewhere in between, just continuing to have those forms of connection. So just a lot of may have been a little bit rambly there, but I like listening and kind of hearing what everyone's saying and try to piece in together. So hopefully that can help someone out there listening.
What about you, Margaret?
I'm going to come in on the family connection. Obviously, I don't have OCD, but as a parent, or that connection, because I found I lost a connection because people didn't understand, and that's generally what people don't understand, then they back away. And it wasn't until I met and Riley. I mean, first we met people that understood, and oh my, what a good feeling that was to have somebody that understood. And so as a parent, that connection is so important to us because you feel very alone. You're desperate to help whether it be your child or your young adult or your mother, father, relative, and it feels really alone. And so I always, and that's when I talk to parents, and always try to have that connection with people and find people that will be, I tell you guys, you're my peeps, I can pick up the phone and call you and you'll understand. And I talk to parents all the time because I say, call me, because I get it. And not that I want to get it, but even with somebody that's lost a child, I was at a funeral today for a dear friend, but ran into somebody that I helped through because they'd lost their child to an overdose, and we both said this isn't a club we want to be in. And I said, we got our phones out, and I said, let's meet for coffee, let's connect, because that disconnection is just hard. It feels lonely. So that on a coming as a family member, and I hope people that listen to this, they can reach out to all of us, and we're there for you, and we understand, And as you listen to everybody's story, everybody is a little bit different, but we all have that common bond. And I always say that I'm so grateful to be a part of this, because there's my connection. So that's mine.
Speaking of connection, yours was a little slow, but I think we got most of it. It just might have been a delay. So we should be good though.
And mine's delaying as I talk.
Here we go. Yeah, it's okay. But we got it though. We got everything. So if you're listening, Margaret lives in the middle of nowhere. And that is why. No, I this is great. I took a lot from everybody. For me, I think that the journey for me with addiction and connection is just a continued learning experience. It's one that I think it's so much easier to just believe that I am just a bad person and I engage in bad behaviors, right? It's so hard. As stupid as, I mean, it's kind of like OCD. It's so hard to resist arguing with my brain. When the brain presents the argument, I don't want to just not argue. That is not my style. First of all, anybody that knows me knows that. And second of all, it's just hard to resist it, even though I know resisting is going to make things better. So the connection there with me is, it's so much easier to just think that I am the horrible person and I can't control myself. I am not weak, but just like indulgent. Because when I think about there being a cause for this, and several of y'all know more about my story about the last few years really unraveling why I engage in addiction behaviors. And the root is just the level of invalidation I've gotten since I was a little kid. But when I think about that, I'm unable to accept that that is a reason why I do behaviors today, because it just seems too easy of an excuse, right? It would be so much easier to just say, I am bad and wrong, and I can't help myself, and everybody's going to find out eventually that I'm a fraud. And so when I started to, I read, what's his face? The Body Keeps the Score. That was the first time I could even identify that I had trauma, or identify that there could be some underlying reasons. And that was painful. Margaret knew this, and she went through it with me. It was painful to even stretch my brain to believe that I could deserve compassion, or I could deserve an excuse. That's it. I could deserve the excuse of why I engage in addiction. And then in further, when I, whether you agree with it or not, the Johann Hari, his research with the rats or mice, and the loss of connection, and that's why and then he, I heard him speak in Breckenridge a few years ago, and I cried through the whole thing when he was talking about just the different countries that do these programs where people get to connect, and they, the amazing changes. And but we sometimes look at our life and go, but I connected. I had friends when I was in high school. I had friends when I was in, my family was nice. They provided food and shelter, and I got clothes. But did you get the things that, that you needed that don't fuel feeling disconnected? Did you get the things that don't, and then OCD on top of that, when you're keeping the secret from people, you're then disconnected from your community, from your family. So that fuels it too. So, yeah, I'm still unraveling it all and still figuring out whether I'm worthy of there being an excuse. So that's where I'm at. So we can open it up, and if Neil wants to read the rules of the group, I'm just kidding, Neil. let's chat. We've got 15, 20 minutes. What resonated for you? What's coming up for you? What do we want to discuss further? Did something hit you? Do you want to elaborate? Let's open it up.
I'll say something since I went first. I've had the most time to think about it, right? So I just wanted to say something about, we kind of referenced how using alcohol as an example could help us with a sense of belonging. But then it just kind of, what struck out to me is that at some point we all realize that sense of belonging is counterfeit, right? It's more like fitting in, because fitting in and belonging are two different things. Anybody can fit in, they just have to act a certain way. But to belong, like for your belonging to be non-contingent on anything, like that's a whole different type of, connection. And so something I wanted to share is that at some point I did realize that all these connections I had made with people over alcohol was fraudulent. And I was kind of lost at that point. So it's like, okay, well, I want to be an authentic person. So what do I do? Well, the only thing that's ever made me feel good before is to drink. So I'll just do that alone and see if I can figure out how to belong, since it helped me belong kind of before. So let me just try that out. And so, probably, and that's as more of an adult, right? So it's like, oh, I used to belong when I was younger and I would drink with my friends, and now I don't have as many friends for just life stages. I've got 3 kids under the age of 5. And so, if I want to feel better, like that's my go-to, even though I know that what the good feelings it created for me were fake. I mean, or counterfeit, if you will.
I think anytime that you've got a quick fix solution, how appealing that is for people who are suffering is, instead of sometimes having to sit through the discomfort. And, Neil and I, we've had these discussions a little bit too, from what, you've talked about with me and what you've gone through. But that notion of just right now, I just want to feel good right now, right, is so freaking powerful for so many people. And when you've got someone like me saying, are you willing to sit with that? And sometimes it's like, no, I'm not. I'm just, and that's where things like drugs or alcohol, self-injury can come into play at that point. Eating disorder behavior, binging and purging, all of those things that are just so powerful in the moment to distract you, to give you relief. That's, from a therapy point of view, that's what I'm up against every day with people. One of my favorite phrases in the world is an Irish phrase, and it says, only an Irishman can ask you to go to hell and make you look forward to doing it. And that is what I think ERP is like, right? How do we ask people to do what may turn out to be just the shittiest thing you've ever done in your life, which is sitting in your discomfort and facing your fears, and make you excited about it and look forward to it? Because my job is to try to convince you that there is a pot of gold at the end of that journey, if you're willing to go through it. And my job also, and this is where I think some therapists fail at, is not to shame you on days that you decide, I don't want to do it today, right? But it's to be open and accepting of you as a person and say, hey, I get it. It's a rough day. Let's start again tomorrow. And be okay. We're good. We're okay with that.
I love you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just can I just expand a little bit, piggyback on Patrick's thoughts and what Neil said earlier about, I totally am relating to the fact that I wanted an easy, quick fix really, really fast. And that was it. That was a straight shot, silver bullet for me to feel like I was feeling better. And that's what I did for 15 years. And what Neil was alluding to, or I think you frankly just said, was, it's an illusion. And actually it's a kind of a sinister irony that you feel connection while you're drinking or binging, and then the next day or week after that or whatever, it actually makes I'll talk for myself, it made my ability to connect even worse because it exacerbated my symptoms, made my anxiety go way up, made my OCD go way up, made me ruminate, especially about my life. And then the cyclical circle happened where by the end of the week, I was so lost again, disconnected, that I craved that again to redo it over a Thursday, Friday, Saturday binge. Same thing happened. So I think that's really interesting for Patrick to point out of wanting to, the easy fix. And I still struggle with that, especially, doing projects and recovery. I still kind of gravitate to that easy thing, but what's given me the most is working really, really freaking hard at the things that were always the hardest for me. And that was to be vulnerable at my most raw and emotional and scared. And that's when I felt the most connected. And a lot of that was connecting with friends in a different way that I'd never done that before. Not over a bar, not over a pool table, but sitting and talking with friends and having conversations that really solidified things and made me grow and continue my recovery, both from that lifestyle and from OCD in general. And as I became more vulnerable in many different ways with people, it helped me practice that in opening myself up to like having goals and values and some sort of purpose and meaning. And once I started to establish a better foundation or structural component in my life, something that I can really build off of, that's when I really started to make progress, especially with not self-medicating so much, not going to that, but working, doing the wind sprints, doing the cardio before the game, doing the hard work before the game comes on. It's really, really hard to do. It's hard to do. I had to make a decision to do it, and then I had to do it, which are tough things. And I had the mindset of a quick fix was very hard for me to really counteract. But once I started to think like that there's possibility, but it's going to take some hard work. It's going to take me facing some fears and holding myself accountable, being self-compassionate to myself, and not holding as much shame as I should, giving myself forgiveness and talking to my friends who were with me during this time and their thoughts. So all these things, I think, have solidified and broadened my grasp of connection, which has helped me so much with OCD and alcohol and all that fun stuff. So thank you to Patrick and Neil for bringing up some topics I thought were really poignant and I related to very much. So,
Sean, just to add to that, you really hit the nail on the head right there. And I was thinking about this while you were speaking. I feel like I always get ideas when you speak. It's a good thing, Sean. But one thing that I was thinking about is like, I feel the most disconnected, when my OCD is just rearing its head so hard. And I feel the most disconnected when I need to, when my addiction was rearing its head so hard. So, what I mean by that too is like, what was really hard about this too, and I think the hardest thing about the addiction aspect of it is OCD and addiction. You think that they are the things that you're going to connect with. And, I spent so much time as a kid playing sports, watching sports, loving the Mets, loving all these things. And then when someone tells you, no, John, you can't watch sporting events anymore because that's going to be bad for you. That's going to make you, that could be a temptation for you to gamble. And I remember when I first started doing that, I was like, what do you mean I can't do that? I love sports. Like, this is me. This is a part of me. And I think also having the hardest thing that I've had to do when you talk about the hard work is letting myself know, okay, even though I identified myself so much as this huge Mets fan, the sports fan, I got to be willing to sit there and say, okay, I don't need to watch sports for a year. And I can be happy with that. And I can be, it was really uncomfortable at first. I was like, there's absolutely no way I'm not going to watch sports. I mean, I love sports. But then when I kind of I had to knock my ego down a little bit, to be quite frank. I think that's the hardest thing is OCD always gives me a pretty big ego, to be quite frank, and I didn't really realize it until I started kind of doing some real internal work. And ego sometimes is associated as a bad thing, right? We all have egos, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just one of those things when I was able to drop that and sit there and say, okay, you don't have to watch sports to be at peace. You don't need that. That was a big thing for me. When you talk about the hard work, I started doing a lot more things that did start to fulfill me. And, it's like, okay, well, now I don't need to watch the Mets on a Friday night to be fulfilled. I can do plenty of other things. I can take a walk. I can go down to the water with my girlfriend. I can go cook dinner for my mom, and I could be happy with that. And I could be and I love that, like, way much more than watching a sporting event, right? And that's a different type of connection. When you're connecting at that deeper level with the people that you love, my God, that's a beautiful feeling. And Neil, you were talking about that. I didn't have that before for a long time because gambling and watching games was taking that away. And I didn't realize that was a real thing in this world. That, oh my God, there's something more than placing a bet on a sporting event. When you're in it, you don't think there is anything more, especially when you're really, really in it. So that's just something that I've been seeing is being able to do these awesome things that I've learned to do in a sense. And also being compassionate with myself when it's like, okay, there is March Madness on, there's sporting events that are on. Oh my God, you thought about it. This is something that comes in your mind. Don't be mean to yourself. Use those resources that you have around you. Open up, be vulnerable, like you said, Sean. Have a conversation with your therapist. Have a conversation with the people that you're close with your friends, with your family members, with your girlfriend, with your significant other, etc. And then that shame goes down because you're also, okay, I said this, I feel good about myself. I'm going to, instead of going in and saying, okay, I'm going to watch this March Madness game, and then, well, if I watch this March Madness game, what can happen next? No, I'm going to say instead of watching the game, I'm going to take a step back and do that hard work to have a kind of a different frame of thinking of it. So that's helped me a little bit, I guess, in terms of finding connection outside of the addiction.
I think just to add something a little bit, the disconnect piece also comes for me very, walking alongside the shame piece. It would be looking for ways to justify addictive behaviors because of the suffering for OCD. And then when people don't understand, that's where it just drives the disconnect even further. Well, you don't understand why I need to drink because you don't understand how bad this is. You don't understand how painful it is. You don't understand what a bad week I had. So of course I want to take that extra shot of vodka or whatever else. It's Friday night, like let's party it up. And I think that the lack, which is why, Patrick, I told you that I loved you and I appreciated you, is because the lack of understanding of the impact of shame when people do slip or when people do decide, today's not a day I'm willing to do the work. I mean, I do that for addiction and for OCD. Today's just not the day. But, when you have kind of these even sometimes invisible shame monsters, in the back of your head going, well, if you were stronger, you would do it. If and those things come from years and years and years of shame being put onto you. And that I feel like just drives the disconnect even more, which puts you even more in a space of wanting to engage. And which is why I feel like this is so important to talk about so people understand when they're caught in that shame cycle. They don't have to be. You can say, today is just not the day for me. But you know what? And that's what I do sometimes. But you know what? Tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to commit in the morning to whatever harm reduction or whatever I need to do or whatever ERP or whatever works. Tonight maybe isn't the night, but that's okay. And knowing I'm surrounded with people that can be like, that's okay. And you're still you and you're still worthy.
Mm-hmm. That's such an important point, Chrissy. Because I think is what drives a lot of people, including myself, that can drive you to go back to the negative behaviors, the things that do hurt you when you do feel worthy and you feel like you have people that aren't support you. It makes things a whole lot easier.
Well, shame then becomes another reason to drink, right? So now I've added another thing to the list of reasons why I use, because now I have shame about use. And how do I deal with feeling uncomfortable? I use. Okay. So it compounds itself. I mean, it's just constantly compounding itself. It's a self-perpetuating mechanism that builds upon itself and grows over time until, and remember, your substances don't give a shit about you, right? They really don't, right? You think they make you feel better? They don't care about you because they're hurting your liver, they're harming your brain, you're losing your teeth, depending on what it is you're doing. They don't care about you. But there's that false sense of security that there's something out there in the world that is doing something for me. And well, it is doing something for you, but it's positive and negative. The positive is you get distracted, but the negative is it's wreaking havoc upon you. And there's another reason to continue using, because now you have to deal with all the negative effects that the substance has done for you. And now I have to feel all that. And now how do I deal with that? Well, I'm going to use more substances.
Mm-hmm. Just piles up and piles up and piles up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's really interesting how you say too, how it's almost like when you're in it, you think it's doing something for you when, you know, sometimes you don't want to hear from the people that really do care about you. And that's sometimes the hardest thing. I'm curious how all of us, you know, how you have all dealt with that in the sense of, you know, this is what I care about the most right now. This is what I think is helping me. But, you know, you may have people in your life that clearly love you and are trying to help you, but don't necessarily know how to get through to you. I'm just curious if anyone has anything to say about that in particular.
I can say the negative. I hide it from people. I'm just being honest. And I think that it's important for people to know that you're not alone in those behaviors. I don't have to around Sean, my husband, but I do hide it from people that I know are going to shame me. And you know, Margaret's someone I don't have to hide it from, you know, and that's, you know, but still it's, I'm not proud of it, but I'm just being honest.
Amen.
So I had a thought that I wanted to share, and so one of the things that I believe about my own experience is that what sustains OCD for me is this. I feel like I'm chasing this utopian version of me, and so all this compulsive behavior is about trying to achieve that perfect version of me who doesn't have intrusive thoughts, because I feel like he's out there, and if I could just do it right, I would be him. And so, of course, my compulsions never result in the outcome that I want. So I'm sad. So then I drink. Right.
Another compounding factor right there. Yeah, there we go.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve. Oh, I guess I'll drink. Even though maybe I didn't achieve it because I drank. But that's besides the point. Totally. That's
right.
Totally
and in full disclosure, like I'm not embarrassed to say it. Like when we get off this call, I'm having a cocktail, and I get like, you judge me. I give two shits. Like I like bourbon. And so, I mean, so I'm working on all of this belonging stuff and the worthiness and all, and I'm like, you know, it's different for everybody. And I don't have this big goal of being sober. It's not a goal of mine. It may be one day, but it's not today, and I don't feel bad about it. So at the end of the day, I just wanted to point out that I really like the way that, at least right now, I kind of approach this chasing this perfect version of myself is that is about not belonging to myself. Like, I don't want to be me. I want to be some other version of me. And so I do all this stuff trying to be that guy, which makes me freaking miserable. And belonging to yourself takes a hell of a lot of self-compassion, Chrissy. and it's really awkward. I think self-compassion work is almost as difficult and awkward as ERP. I mean, it's different, but it's equally as freaking awkward in some ways. And so, but being willing to do that and really accepting yourself with your intrusive thoughts. The funny part, the counterintuitive part, is if you do all that shit, it kind of subsides.
Chance is the male Brené. I said it. I don't care.
I'll just throw one quick thing in, then I'll shut up. I don't want to dominate anything. But I used to say at Foglia to people all the time, there was no reason not to drink. If it was a long day, whew, man, it's a long day. I should have a drink. If it was a fast day, God, today flew by. Let's have a drink. What a horrible day. Oh, we should have a drink. God, today was awesome. Oh, yeah, let's celebrate with a drink. I mean, there is no reason not to have a drink or use a substance. Right?
I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, true.
Yeah. And that's why it's so enticing, because it's if you want a connection, that's always there waiting for you. You know, alcohol or drugs are always your friend.
Yeah. Well, we're running an hour, but I do want everybody to get a chance to check in.
Mm-hmm.
This is so groupish. To check in, what can you take away? What can you leave our guests with as you're kind of thinking about what everybody says and how you face the world looking for connection and wanting to belong, as Chance pointed out earlier, the difference between connection and belonging, which I appreciated. So I'll call on y'all again. Neil, why don't you go first?
All right. Man. God, this second year of sobriety is weird. I said this in our private chat, but I'll say it to all of you. I think the first year of sobriety is dealing with all the external stuff, right? I had to quit my job and move home with my parents, and I had no money, and I ruined my life, right? So I blew everything up to get well. In the first year, I got a job. I have hobbies. I have healthy coping mechanisms now, all that kind of stuff. But the second year is all about the internal stuff and really putting a mirror back on myself about how things really are going, right? And the things that I did in the 10 years that I was drinking heavily and all that kind of stuff. So I think the one thing that I'll leave all of you with, and I think everyone made great points, right? And I just think this is such an insidious and sticky subject to tackle, right? There are so many different layers to this. And I think for me, it's difficult to talk about still. I don't know if it'll ever get easier. God, I hope one day it does. That'd be kind of cool. But yeah, so connection comes for me from vulnerability and authenticity. In the 10 years that I was drinking, not once was I my most authentic or vulnerable self. Never. Right? Never ever. The only time I am that for me is when I am sober and of sound mind and healthy and eating well and doing all the things like a normal, human adult male should. But I think that one thing that everyone should know is that when someone gets sober or someone is recovering from any multitude of mental illness, right? We're talking about OCD here, but for me, when I got well from OCD and same thing happened when I got sober, I have forgotten how to connect with people. Totally, right? It's really starting from scratch because you connected for so long in one particular way and you got so good at it, even though it was unhealthy, that I've forgotten it. And so now there's this whole relearning process. And I remember going through it when I got well from OCD, and I'm going through it again right now, and it's tough, but it's worth it. Right? It's worth it to be my most authentic and vulnerable self. It's worth it to come on here once every 2 or 3 weeks. It's worth it to have a healthy, good, strong support system, and real authentic connection that I don't think there's anything that beats it in the world. So I think that's it. Like dropped.
Mic drop. No one else gets to go now. Just kidding. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I was just going to say, off the point of authenticity is, just very briefly, I would say I've been really trying to go back to the things that made me happy, almost even when I was like a child in a sense. And sometimes I think about those days of what really made me happy before all this kind of hurt me in a sense, right? And when you're your most authentic self and when you're just being vulnerable, there's something very liberating about that. And I just want to say to anyone out there, just this weekend, I know you might be going through it, but just remember that you do deserve to be happy. It's not just something that is, you don't deserve it. That's the biggest lie I think we tell ourselves is, I really do believe we are on this earth to be happy. And just remember that you do deserve that happiness. And I would say just try. Yeah, I know it might be hard, but just try to do something this weekend that you really enjoy, whether it's taking a hike on the mountains in Colorado, or whether it's riding a dirt bike, or whether it's just like throwing the football around with your brother. Just whatever. Just do something for yourself this weekend that does make you happy, and try to do it for you in a sense. Don't do it for anyone else. Do it for you. And I think you'll start realizing that everyone else is going to kind of fall right into place. But just be nice to yourself and remember that you really do deserve to be happy. So even if it's 20 minutes, give yourself that 20 minutes to be happy, because it could start to slowly but surely add up.
Thank you, John. What about you, Margaret? I hope we can hear you.
I hope you can hear. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. And I'm just going to ditto on that. The key number one is have connections, have people that you trust and who understand, and who are there for you. And whether if you're a family member or if you're someone struggling with OCD and substance use, and if someone shames you, that's not the person or the group you need to be with. So find those connections that are going to keep you in a healthy place.
Thank you, Margaret. And thank you for all you do for everybody. You're not a shamer. We love you.
Thanks, Mom.
I know.
Love you, son.
Lauren, what about you?
Oh, you guys, that was so sweet. I just loved hearing what everyone had to say, and I think, I was just so moved by the discussion of the connection between shame and lack and unwillingness to be vulnerable because of it, and the lack of connection that engenders. I know that, like, when I stopped drinking, Neil, you were saying, like, when I got sober, I started connecting in a way that I hadn't in a long time, but I don't feel like I really ever, maybe when I was really little, but then a bunch of rejection happened and I was like, nope, not doing that anymore, not putting myself out there anymore. Like, I'm not cool, I'm not like worthy, I'm not worthwhile, so I'm just gonna like shut down. And so alcohol for me was a way to like skip over the vulnerability part, so that I could have some form of connection. But to Chance's point, it was totally superficial. And so I think one of the interesting things for me is that in order to support myself in recovery, both from an OCD perspective and through addiction, has been through doing exposure to being vulnerable, right? And putting myself out there, and that it's the only way to actually feel a sense of connection, because otherwise you're not actually showing who you are and you're not actually being seen. And without that, there's no two-way about the connection. So yeah, I mean, in terms of the journey, like being willing to be who you are, and even if you do feel shame is so critical and so important, because when you feel seen, you don't necessarily feel like such an alien, and then you can get better, right? You don't have to keep turning to the substances or to the compulsions, right? Like, you've got other people around, and I don't know, I'm rambling, but the end.
That was a good ramble. And I think that we probably have identified what we should talk about that in 2 times from now, which would be shame and vulnerability. We can all take a vote afterwards, but I think that was great. Thank you, Lauren. And Sean, weigh in for us. I
am still learning how to connect in the ways that I know we're going to talk about vulnerability in a couple of weeks, but I think you can't talk about connection without talking about being vulnerable and taking that risk. So I'm still learning, and it's a learning process for me. And so I urge people to use connection as sort of a practice, just like we practice use meditation as a practice. ERP as a practice. We practice exposure. We practice acceptance and commitment therapy principles. We practice a skill or a trade. It takes doing it and doing it some more and doing it some more, and sort of being easy on yourself when, like, I get hung up when I'm trying to connect and I don't have the feeling of feeling connected. I get caught up on that, and that's where my OCD kind of jumps in. Or that's what pushes me to want to like find something that's going to help me connect. But as I've sort of challenged myself to make more connections, to make more phone calls, to do things like this, it's helped me to feel connected. And like I said in the beginning, I think connection and having support is a huge pillar or tenet in anybody's recovery from anything. So if you have to take the risk and be vulnerable for a little bit, whether you feel it or not, that's still practice. Like John was talking about earlier, if you have some friends and you just want to throw football together, if you want to reach out to someone, all real important things that you could learn from about yourself in terms of connecting, getting better with conversations, getting better at listening, reaching out. Like I've gotten very lucky with my friends. I don't know how I did it. I got really lucky with my friends who have been very patient and understanding with me. And it's made me to want to practice that with other people, with them as well, which practices my interconnectivity skills. So to wrap up the ramble a little bit, practice it. It may not feel comfortable in the beginning. You may not want to do it at all. And I urge you to take some risks, be vulnerable. It's a practice. You'll get there.
Thank you. Great points. Patrick.
For individuals who have substance use and OCD going on at the same time, at their lowest point, they're connected to two of the shittiest things in the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
A substance that doesn't give a crap about them, and a disorder that tells them they're a fucking loser on a daily basis. Just throw it. It's Friday night, peeps. I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't care. All right. So now I want everyone to think, if there's people out here who don't have OCD, I want you to imagine, what would your life be if all you had was a dealer who only cared about your money, or one in the morning drugstore clerk who only cared that you wanted to buy beer so that they can meet their sales quota, and in the middle of your head, something that was constantly tell you that you suck and you can't meet up to any expectations whatsoever. Imagine if those were the only two connections that you had in your life, because you've alienated yourself from everyone else. As Lauren, I think, very aptly said, Neil and Sean, you've all said that other people are vulnerable, right? I'm vulnerable when I'm around other people. They can judge me, they can shame me, they can put me down. And it's best if I just leave all of them so that nobody can say, I mean, my OCD is bad enough. It's doing enough of a number on me. I don't need anybody else telling me how bad I am or crappy I am as well, too. I've got OCD with me, And no matter where you go, your brain always goes with you, which means OCD is always there with you, too. You can't run away from it, right? It's always in your head. So in some ways, the most difficult thing you'll ever ask someone to do is to walk away from what they now believe are the only two connections left in their life and try to do something different instead. And that's what I love about doing the work, because I think I work with the bravest people in the world, because I work with people every day that do that and make the decision that it's time. It's time to do that. And I hope anybody listening feels inspired by the fact that there's people before you and there will be people after you that will do that as well too. And that's what we want for everyone.
Thank you. I actually just wrote down that quote and we'll be putting it on Instagram with fucking on there too. That may put an asterisk instead of the U. So thank you. That really put things into a very interesting head frame for me to think about. So appreciate you. Chance McNeely.
I have to go after that.
I know.
So I'm just going to say that a lot of, at least for me, a lot of the connections that I sought for the first 25 years of my life were to fit in, right? I would do anything I could to try to fit in. And that I betrayed myself over and over again as I tried to do that. And so I think it was Neil, or maybe it was, I don't remember who said it, but how do I connect with someone now? And for me, I just want to say that I think we have a really good tool, and that's empathy. We're very empathetic people, and I can show up for other people in the world with empathy. And when I do that, I have found in my own experience that I can make very authentic connections with people, because everybody just wants to know that everybody wants to belong. Everybody wants connection. That's why we're here on Earth. Like, we're a social species. And so I just want to read this one little drop in here by Maya Angelou. Says that you're only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place, no place at all. The price is high and the reward is great. And so to kind of break that down, in order to live a wholehearted life, as Brene Brown would say, you basically can't try to fit in certain places. You have to belong no matter where you are, and you have to belong to yourself. And the only way to achieve that is to let a lot of shit go. Because if I'm still chasing, being in a certain friend group, or being in this, this type of job, or being in this, then I'm trying to belong in certain spaces, as opposed to being my authentic self and belonging wherever the fuck I decide to go. And so I just kind of want to put that out there, because I know how hard I have chased, and sometimes continue to chase whatever this perfect version of me that I can never attain. And when I do accept myself for who I am and believe that I belong, I'm a pretty damn happy person, and it's awesome. I just sometimes mess up, and then I have to go back through that process. So that's all.
Well, thank you, everybody. My final words are just my gratitude for you being willing to come and be as vulnerable as you have been, to all of the listeners, and this, this video will live on for people to be able to revisit it when they just need to know they aren't alone. For me, just quickly, I have a lot to marinate. If you are watching this and you just didn't know that connection and belonging had anything to do with why you engage with substance use, why you engage with addictive behaviors, I hope that you're able to take that with you and see all these faces here that just get it. My commitment every day to myself is just to wake up and keep working on me. Wake up and keep learning how to connect better and to belong. When you're not inherently shown that or taught that, you have to learn it on your own. And like Chan says, if you're chasing it in places that it's just not going to happen, that makes you look for the substance that really makes you feel like you can connect. So I just appreciate this. And I also just want to let everybody who's watching, tomorrow you can wake up and commit to learning how to connect. You can commit to learning how to connect tonight. You can start anytime. And that's the beautiful part of working on any sort of recovery. There is no, I have to start when when I lose 10 pounds. I have to start when I make this much money. I have to. No, you can start now. And you know what? You just started now, because here you are with all of us. So we will continue to show up for you. We'll be back in a couple weeks, and then we will be back 2 weeks after that to talk about vulnerability and shame. To the panelists, you have my heart and you have my love. I just so much appreciate you, your willingness to show up to this community and be vulnerable. You are my connection. You are where I belong. I'm not going to cry. So with that, I just thank you so much for all of you watching. Please, if you want to connect and take the first step with a big group of people, head on over to Gamechangers.com and join us for our OCD Game Changers retreat on May 29th. That is a really great way to start. Even if you're scared, you can just pop into rooms and be anonymous, and you get to see that other people have experienced a lot of what you have. And you belong here. And we hope to see you here in a couple weeks. Bye, everyone.